We're in Boston.
We're in Boston.
And I get to touch you again.
I know. It's funny because I was listening to our podcast from whenever it was, 2 weeks ago.
Uh-huh.
And you were like, the next time I see you in like real life, you will have had brain surgery. And like,
I know.
here I am, guys. I've had brain surgery.
I know. And if anyone's watching video,
you like can't really see, but it's pretty gnarly. Some staples here.
Yeah.
Maybe
We're
I'll
going to
just show
share
you.
a picture too.
Yeah. There's some staples. Got a nice little buzzed, weird mohawk situation happening.
I counted and there's 27 staples.
Yeah. 27 staples in the head. But
2 different
feeling
locations.
Pretty good, honestly.
So I'm just noticing that the AC just went on. And I feel like it might be like a lot of background muffle. Should we pause it and listen one more
Like
time?
Hank told us it'd be fine. So we're just going to let it be fine.
Okay.
He left.
So this is
Hank
one
left
time.
the mics.
Yeah, this is one time that it's actually not our fault.
Yeah. So there have been times where I haven't pressed record and we all know I'm at fault. Okay, well, Hank went back to LA today and he took the microphones with him. It was like the one thing we needed to do the podcast. We have like 2 episodes.
Well, we thought
to
he took
record.
the SIM card and then
Yeah.
he's like, no, I didn't take the SIM card. It's on the desk. And then we go get it and we're like, oh, okay, wait, what about the mics? Oh, wait, what about the
The
cord?
cord that connects the sound machine to the computer. And he's like, oh yeah, no, I have all of those things. So
we're recording on the phone.
recording on the phone. So if the sound quality isn't the best, that's
Blame
why.
our producer Hank. No, it's not Hank. He had a lot juggling.
He had a lot going on. He went back to LA to be with Brody for like the next 5 days while Erica hangs out with me.
We
which is so
literally
nice.
swapped in the air today.
I know. Like he left this morning and you got in this afternoon. It was just.
I wonder where in the country we passed each other.
I'm trying to think. His flight was at like 6.
So that was at 3 a.m. my time. So then,
Maybe in like Colorado.
yeah, maybe.
Yeah. Maybe.
It was really crazy seeing you. So I took the bus over, very easy to get here. And then when I was waiting for the elevator to come down, I felt so like nervous
I know.
inside.
I felt nervous too. And then the doors open and Erica just screams, ah!
I was just so excited
Yeah.
to see
It
you.
was nice. A happy, joyous reunion.
Yeah, but I agree. It's like weird being in this like, where I'm like, why are we here?
This skyrise apartment, just hanging out. That's what I'm saying. So I've been telling Erica, like, since I've been here, I've been feeling weird, which you knew I was going to feel.
Right.
And I think I didn't know I was going to feel.
I know, it's just so interesting because I'm like,
I didn't have time to think about like
That's
what I
fair.
was going to feel.
you were like on doctor's appointments literally hours every day.
Yeah. And then I feel like I was just so focused on like the goodbye moments, which we can get into. But then once I had the surgery, it's like everything was so busy. And then once I left the hospital, I'm just like in this random apartment. I'm like, oh, I could be definitely doing this at home.
Yeah. Well, so last time, your first surgery, 36 hours after your surgery, you went home and you went back into mom mode, like
Mom
immediately.
mode. And then also like I just had people at my house
Rotating.
all hours of the day
for 6 weeks.
6 weeks. People dropping off food and flowers and visiting, and which was amazing and so fun. But like I wasn't really resting
Right.
realistically. Like I wasn't.
Oh, you did IVF.
Right. I did IVF. We moved. Like there were a lot of things that happened where it was like, oh, like how did your recovery go last time? Like I don't think I did recover.
No.
Like I think I just. It was like I knew my life was about to change forever. So I was like, let's just cram as much stuff as we can in
Exactly.
before I can't do things.
Right. So this time you flew to Boston. You did your T-cell
Collection,
collection.
which was a lot gnarlier than I was anticipating.
I feel like they beat you up.
Yeah. So basically to get the T cells, they have to use these like, and sorry for anybody who's squeamish if you're listening.
Okay,
to
if
this.
anyone's squeamish,
Just don't listen. Just skip this one. This intro. You can listen to the actual like episode because that's actually a really fabulous episode.
Yeah.
But
probably skip the next 5 minutes.
yeah, next 5 minutes, just skip ahead. Yeah, you have to be hooked up to like a dialysis machine essentially for like 6 hours. And so you have to use like a thicker needle than you typically would for like just getting your blood drawn quickly. My veins are too small. And so they told me
And we have the same vein
I
problems.
know. And they were like, you're going to need a line placement. Smartly, I didn't Google what that meant.
Is that like the same for everyone? Like the kind that you got?
No.
Okay.
No. So I think it's more, so like my dad had it when he had his stents put in. They do it like with a catheter, but usually they go through the groin. This was straight up in my jugular vein. And you like go, I was not prepared. I like left my phone with Hank. I'm like, hey, see you in 5 minutes. I go up and they're like, okay, so like the procedure, blah, blah, blah. Would you like some like anesthetic? And I'm like, am I having a surgery? Like, what?
Oh my God.
And then they kept asking me, like, you know what's happening? And I'm like, I'm getting a line placement. They're like, yeah. No one explained what that was.
Oh my God, that's so terrible.
So then they're like, okay, so basically what's going to happen is like, we're going to cut you open. Stop recording.
It did not stop recording. Our food might be here though.
Oh, okay, quick break.
Okay, so when we were just talking, the Thai food came, and
then we took a little break.
And we ate Thai food.
We ate Thai food, chatted.
Okay, so what we were saying was
I got a catheter in my jugular vein. And I didn't realize that I was like having a full-blown like awake procedure. Like they took me into an operating room and I just had my neck cut open and then they just shoved a catheter in there and then it stayed in there for 6 hours while I got hooked up to this machine. And I just like couldn't really like move.
Yeah, I mean, it was a really intense looking picture.
And then they just pull it out. They just tell you to hum.
When you said that, I was like, oh, this must be like an incorrect word that you just spelled.
No.
So you're going,
So they literally like tip you upside down so that no air bubbles get in, whatever the hell that means. Okay, so you're like a little upside down. And then they just say, okay, hum. And then they just pull it out. And I'm just looking at Hank's face. And he's like...
His mouth is dropped.
Yeah, I mean, like, it was so long. It just like kept going.
How long did you hum for?
Like a while. And then it just like blood starts like pouring out.
Oh my God.
I mean, I couldn't see it, but like I could feel it. And I'm like, oh, this is like where you don't want to get like cut. Like,
oh my God.
This is like what they go for when they want to murder you.
Oh no.
So anyways,
it's wild that you had no idea what you were getting yourself into.
That was like a lot more traumatic than I was sort of like anticipating. So that was a long day.
It's a very long day. And then you were just like next day apartment shopping and then getting an MRI.
Well, no, then I had an allergic reaction to the adhesive they used. So then I had to go back, get an MRI, and then get this like new adhesive put on that's like hypoallergenic or something. I don't even know.
You have a lot of similar issues.
I know. It's really dumb.
It is.
And they're like, yeah, it could be the adhesive or it could be the cleaning solution.
That's literally what I went through with epidural.
Yeah. So it's like, could have been anything.
And then after my allergy test, after the epidural, they're like, we actually don't know what it is. Cool.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, these people were great. And it was nice. I like didn't make an appointment. I just like went back to where I came from. And I was like, hello, like remember me from yesterday with the catheter in my neck? Like I'm having an allergic reaction. Wow. And then, I had like a couple days to recover from that and then went in for brain surgery.
I know. It's so weird not being there with you. And so you and Hank, both of your moms came out. Mm-hmm. You went in for surgery like 5 a.m. I thought it was going to be 2.5 to 3 hours. So at the 3 hour mark, I start texting Hank and your mom like, is she out yet? Is she out yet? Every 20 minutes, is she done yet?
Well, you texted us also in the middle of the night for you before I had even gotten into the hospital.
It was like 3 a.m. my time.
And I was like, Erica, I haven't even stepped foot in the hospital yet. Like, relax.
I couldn't sleep that night.
I know. I didn't sleep that night either. I was tossing and turning. And then I was like, I'm going to take a good nap soon. So.
Yes, that is true.
Yeah.
So your surgery.
Surgery went like well. I mean, basically, I think we said it last time, like the worst case scenario was that it wasn't tumor, which is like
so weird.
Kind of weird to like be wishing to have tumor.
Right. It's just like that if it wasn't tumor, the trial would have ended in that moment. You would have gone to Boston for nothing. And with your type
why am I in Boston?
And with your kind of tumor that it's likely to come back. So it's like you want it to come back when you have the opportunity to be in a trial.
To do something about it. Yeah. And be in a great trial. So that was my biggest fear was like I'd wake up without the catheter in and they'd be like, It was just scar tissue.
So did you ask them the second you woke up?
Yeah.
What'd you say?
Was it tumor?
What'd they say?
Yes. And I said, okay, great.
Which is so weird because the last time you had surgery, the first time, the first question was it a meningioma?
Right.
Which would mean that it's like benign.
Right. A benign
and
tumor.
They said
and
no.
They said no. That was like, This time I was like, yay, it's tumor. It's GBM. Woohoo.
Yeah.
So yeah,
because they had to wait for the
vibes.
pathology.
That's why it took so long. So it's like the actual procedure itself was like 2.5 to 3 hours, but then they had to wait for the pathology report to come back to say that it was tumor so that they could put in the catheter and like finish up what they'd started.
Yeah.
And then it was just a couple days in the hospital, you know, resting, recovering, watching some terrible TV shows.
Yeah.
And then I got really sad.
Because you're like alone.
I mean, like Hank was here.
No, I know. I mean, it's you and Hank, but like you're alone from everyone else.
Yeah, like I just like am seeing like really sweet pictures of my baby.
Yeah.
And videos, which makes me so happy.
But also sad.
And sad. And like there's like a lot of relief in knowing that like he's okay when I'm not there.
Mm-hmm.
Like that is all I could want. And also that's sad.
Yeah.
You know?
What's sad about it?
That like he'll be okay if I'm gone. Like I want him to be okay if I'm gone. But it's also like a sad idea.
Yeah.
You know?
Do you feel like you're like seeing that?
A little bit. And like in most of the ways I feel really good about it. I'm like, oh, like Brody has the best people in his life. So like he's gonna have the most beautiful life.
Yeah, I mean sometimes when we all hang out and like you're not there for like some reason, it's like
your mind like goes there.
Yeah, it's like, oh, this is really fucking sad.
Yeah.
Yeah, like this is I don't like this without you here.
I know, I feel like when Alex texted me the other day and was like, we really missed you on the 4th.
Oh.
I feel like that's what she was like thinking about.
Yeah, I actually was not thinking about it because I was like, I'm going to see Jordy.
You're like, I'm coming to Boston.
So I
literally the next day.
Yeah, like less than 24 hours later. So I think on the 4th, it wasn't.
Right, she's probably like, Erica's leaving me and going to see Jordy. And
Right.
Yeah.
And I think it's more, if I'm with Hank and Brody, I feel it more.
That makes sense.
Than when you're both not there.
Yeah. I think, it's like so bittersweet because I feel like this whole thing has brought like our like family units, like not like we were so close before.
Yeah.
But now it's like a different
right. Like we
level.
do need a compound.
Like I go to your house almost every single day of the week and I feel like your nanny's like, who is this person?
No, actually, she's really loves you.
I feel like she's just like, who is this Jordy that's like just constantly at Erica's house at like 1 p.m.?
She's never questioned it.
She's probably grateful because I was there that one time he projectile vomited and I helped her.
He was like, oh my God. She was like, thank God Jordy was here.
Yeah, that was an opportune moment for me to be there. But yeah, I just feel like I'm so like grateful because now it's like I know that Hank will like you guys are Hank's best friends too.
Yeah.
Which is really cute.
I mean, I love you and I love Hank.
Yeah.
Brody's like always been my like
little baby.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He has been.
I know. So like I just feel really grateful. Like we have a little group chat now with like us.
I know.
Us
There's so many group chats.
and Hank, which is just like Hank should feel so honored.
Does he?
I don't know.
Yeah, we have to ask him. Hank,
Hank,
do you feel honored? And if not, we'd like you to feel honored. It is a privilege.
Yeah, I'm just like, we call it like the modern fam chat because we're just like sister wives.
Yeah, Ramsey's not in it, but I don't know if he wants to be.
I feel like he like you probably fill him in when necessary.
I do. I don't fill him in like
because it's like our kid is at home, so like Hank needs to be in the chat.
Yeah,
so it makes sense. Like we're getting a lot of Brody updates in real time,
and I need to see all the Brody updates too.
Of course. So yeah, it's been like a very bitter, sweet.
Okay, well, what's been the best part about being in Boston? Like most surprising best part?
Best part of Boston?
It's also raining outside.
Is it?
I hear pitter patters.
It did say it was going to rain maybe today.
Wow.
So, well, like I can speak for today. Like
I know. I mean, like in general. In Boston.
Okay. Well, can I tell you about about today? Well, I know it's obviously that you're here, but I was going to say it's like 111 degrees in the valley right now.
Yes.
And it's 80 degrees here.
So that feels better.
I mean, that feels great.
Yeah.
Yeah, like we walked around and yes, it was humid, but like 111 is really something.
It is really something.
Yeah, so that's been nice. And then I just love how walkable the city is. And like there's a lot of history and like cool architecture.
Yeah.
And I feel like we're in a very cute little pocket.
Right.
We like
can see the water.
Yeah, I was saying like me and Hank always like we didn't really ever do like city living. We've like always lived in a suburb together.
Mm-hmm.
So this is like our city living experience.
Right.
Where we're like living in like a high-rise building.
I know.
With like all windows. It's just a weird like
weird.
juxtaposition.
Although I really miss your couch.
Yeah, I know this couch is trash.
I feel like it's hurting my back.
I know it hurts my back.
It's so upright.
When I can't sleep though, like I come out here and I lay down on it.
Why?
I don't know, like sometimes I need to change your scenery.
Yeah, I wish they gave you a comfy couch.
Yeah.
It's so upright.
It's so funny, Natalie was saying, she was like, we should have sent you a couch
Yeah.
to Boston. We should have sent you the Crate and Barrel couch to Boston.
Yeah,
I know,
guess
I wish.
Would have been nice.
Yeah, so overall, I think this waiting period's just been hard.
Because again, like you haven't actually done the treatment and you could be doing this recovering at home.
Right, I've done it before and like I was able to like have everyone I love be with me. And now I'm just like in a random city, in a random apartment.
Yeah, it's like, why are you here? But once you do the treatment,
No, I
think
know.
once you're in the hospital, you're
Literally
gonna,
going in on Thursday.
Yes. And you can't fly like within 2 weeks of your surgery.
Right, so realistically, I know I couldn't be home and do this.
Yeah.
It's not like I just decided to stay.
Correct.
But I also just like don't like doing nothing all day.
I know. Okay, so this is the other thing. 4 days post-surgery, I could tell you were not doing well. Like, I took 3 baths yesterday. I call
the number
you
of bath correlates with
how unwell
how
Jordy is.
unwell I am.
And I just could tell you were not, and like you've posted on Instagram too. Like it's been hard. I think people can tell like you've been struggling. And I was like, Jordy, do you know it's been 4 days since your brain surgery? Like you're acting like it's been like 3 months and you're just like an unproductive couch potato.
Yeah, that's how I felt.
I know, it's 4 days.
Yeah.
Most people are so hospitalized then.
I know.
I wanted to like shake you. In
Yeah,
that
like some
moment.
people like go to rehab after
Yeah.
and like have a lot of things to do. Yeah, I was like,
And you're like, I'm not doing anything. I'm not doing anything. I'm like, it's been 4 days.
yeah, I'm just like, okay, so like I took 3 baths.
You're like, I haven't been outside in 36 hours. That's it. You were discharged from the hospital. You had to go move.
Yeah.
It was 36 hours. That's like not that long.
I know. It's so hard. Like when I listen to what you say, I know that is the truth.
Yeah, and it kind of sounds crazy.
It sounds insane for me to be like, do more, Jordy.
Right.
But in my mind, I'm like, Jordy, what have you been doing all day?
Okay, you posted a LinkedIn update.
I was just like, like how can I
know.
feel like productive?
And to be fair, I get it.
Because you're the same.
I know. But on the outside.
Right. You can be objective with me.
Yes. I'm like, we got to get you chill a bit.
I know. It was hard. So yeah, I've just been, like in my feelings more, I think.
Yeah. I've been in my feelings this whole time.
You have, yeah.
And I think it all settled down. Like there was so much focus on what am I going to do? And like there hasn't been any time. And I think without Brody here and without the distraction and just sitting, it's caught up with you.
Definitely. I mean, I think it's the first time I've just been able to focus on this ever. And most people, I don't think, get the opportunity to really do that. Like usually you are in your home and like having to just still continue living your life. So this is like a full-on break from me being normal Jordy and just being like patient Jordy and getting better. So yeah, we'll see what the next couple weeks look like.
I know. It's going to be so hard for me to get back on a plane and like send you, like, I don't even know what's going to happen to you.
I know. Hank will take videos with me.
Okay. Thanks,
It'll
Hank.
be probably not fun to watch, but
you also have so many control issues with like letting go of control in your body. So I can like see you trying to like hang on like really tight.
Do you know what's funny though? This whole experience has made me a lot less like that. Like I was telling you when I went into the operating room, like I saw a massive drill. And I was just like, oh yeah, they're definitely going to use that to like drill my head open.
Yeah.
And then I just like went to sleep. They were just like, yeah, like think of like who you'd like to see in your dreams. I'm like, okay.
Wow, that's what they said?
Yeah, they're like, sometimes people dream when they're on anesthesia.
Did you?
No. And thank God, because, well, I wanted to see Brody, which makes sense. But then I was like, they're like, what is your son like? And then I was like, a bus. And then I was like, oh my God, I'm going to dream about wheels on the bus. And I didn't. So
that's good.
Crisis averted.
Crisis averted. Imagine there's just like always, it would be a nightmare, I think.
It would be a huge nightmare.
Yeah, you did see a drill.
Yeah, I did see a drill, and like I knew what was going to happen to me, and I like just fully submitted.
Yeah.
I'd probably be way better at laboring now.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right.
You know, because like I couldn't let go when I was in labor.
But
now I would probably like be more in surrender mode.
Sure. So I guess we'll see what happens. And you have how many more days? You have a few more days, and then on Thursday
I go in.
You go in to get hospitalized for like 10 days.
Yeah, so I'll do like 3 days of chemo and then the infusion, and then they'll monitor me until I'm well enough to be released.
I guess it could be less than a week.
It could. It's just like I want to get sick.
Yeah, but they say like within 3 days.
Within like 3 to 5 days, I should be like more myself. Yeah.
It's just going to be so weird not to talk to you.
I know. And I realize like that also, like the time difference. Like I wake up and you guys are sleeping, and like I really don't like that.
I know. And then you have to wake up. You have to stay up until
I stay up, which is fine because I'm like more of a night owl. Yeah, like I can stay up and chat.
Yeah, we
with you
FaceTime
guys.
with Alex every night.
Yeah, every single night we
at
FaceTime.
Like 9 p.m. LA time.
Do a debrief of, the whole day. And yeah, that's been like the thing that like makes me get through my days.
Right.
Oh, I'm just gonna like chat with my friends tonight.
I know, me too.
I know.
It's nice.
I
also try and call you.
On the phone a lot.
Yeah, I try and call you like
throughout the day. Yeah, but typically I'm like napping or.
Right. No, we've talked though.
Napping, yeah, a little bit.
But it's going to be weird not to talk to you. Yeah. Or maybe you'll answer. I guess we'll see what happens.
I mean, yeah, like I could answer. I might not remember it, but I could answer.
Right. Well, I'm glad you are here.
I'm glad that you're here. I'm glad that the surgery is behind us.
Yeah, and like you seem, other than still having the same physical deficit.
But I'm like way more able-bodied than I was when I got out of my surgery last time.
Oh, yeah.
Like it took me a long time to figure out like how to walk more normally again and like feel comfortable standing in the shower by myself and like
that's interesting.
I didn't feel any of that this time.
Oh, that's great.
Because I've already adapted
to
the feeling. So yeah, I feel like in that sense the recovery was quicker. Yeah. So
now for treatment trial time.
We'll update you the next time we have an update. I mean, Erica's gonna be here for 5 days.
We'll probably film another intro while we're here because then you have the infusion and you'll be in the hospital.
Right, and then we won't be able to film intros for a minute. And we have some really good episodes that we've pre-recorded, and then we're also recording a couple of podcast episodes while you're out here. So we have a lot of things happening.
We have a lot of things, and we'll give you updates. And then today's episode...
Hank never really got back to us about Camille.
Right, I was just going to say that.
Yeah, so... This episode, we really liked filming this episode.
Yeah.
A lot. Like, we really loved talking with our guest today. And she is a friend of me and Hank's. And when we were thinking about the different, like, types of grief that exist, one of the things that I've thought a lot about, because I know a few people in my life who have gone through this, is where, like, you have an illness that's, like, a little bit more invisible. And it's like people wouldn't know necessarily looking at you that like you're going through a daily struggle with whatever it is that you're going through. In this case, it's multiple sclerosis. And we loved talking to this guest. She was like so vulnerable and very like knowledgeable in her diagnosis. And I feel like someone who is similar to me and to you in the sense that like being like a hard worker and like always giving it your all and giving it your best is like so important. And it's like sometimes a disability or like a medical condition can like make that feel really hard to do.
Right.
And that's the case with MS. And so she just gave us so much insight into what it's like to live as someone who has MS and what
Which is
it
like a
looks like.
chronic.
Yeah, it's like a chronic. I mean, it's like she has relapses and she doesn't know exactly what they're going to look like or what it's going to like manifest as
Or how long. And
yeah, like I was just so shocked to learn about like how long these relapses sometimes last. And, you know, like this, she talks about this in the podcast where she was talking about how she loves traveling and she like loves snowboarding. And there's like these very active things that she loves to do. And it's like, she has to like really save up a lot of energy to do those things, and then like really has to rest her body after she's done. And that can be so hard for someone who's like a go-getter.
Right. And also because of the invisibility, there's the part of like, do you share or do you conceal?
Yeah.
And talking about like how she moved forward in a relationship with having MS. And she was really easy to talk to. I mean, I had never spoken to her before, and she's just so sweet and easy to get to know. And like you can't see she has MS. Like you can't tell. And you have two friends who have MS, and so it looks really different in different people.
In different people. And it's like you just never know what someone's going through. And I'll share my story. This week I was walking on the street and
I was wondering if you're going to share this.
Yeah. I was walking on the street and I'd gone on one walk in the morning. It was my first walk, like since my surgery. And so then we did another walk at night and I started feeling sort of like lightheaded and like a little bit dizzy. So I just sat down for like 10 minutes, caught my breath, and then I was like, okay, I feel ready to walk back now. I took off my sweater because I was feeling warm. And as we were passing by like a couple smoking some cigarettes, I just put my sweater over my nose, mainly because I just like was feeling dizzy and I didn't want to like breathe in the smoke because I knew it would make me feel not great. And as I walk by, the guy says, oh, what, are you scared you're going to get cancer? Ugh. And I like couldn't believe that came out of his mouth. Like, who the fuck says that?
I know, so...
But also, I like turned around and I was like, I already fucking have it. And then it stopped him in his tracks. And like, I don't get angry very often.
No, you don't. I was surprised you said that.
Yeah, I don't get angry very often. But then sometimes when I do get angry, I get really angry and it's really hard for me to let it go. So like a road rage kind of situation. Yeah. This felt like a road rage situation.
I mean, like, that's fair. That was warranted.
Yeah. And I was just like, what? Who says that to someone? Like, oh, I'm inconveniencing you? Like, you're smoking and I'm just covering my mouth? Like, I'm not judging you.
I just like want to go back to him, take off your beanie.
I was literally wearing a beanie and it's like 80 degrees outside. And I just wanted to rip off my beanie and be like, do you see I have 20 something staples in my head?
Like I literally had brain surgery last week.
Yeah, like it's too late. I already have cancer. So like, yeah, I don't want to breathe in your disgusting cigarette smoke. I'm sorry.
I like honestly cannot believe.
Yeah.
Like and obviously he did not know.
He of course didn't know my situation, but I guess that's my whole point in talking about these invisible illnesses is like, you just don't know what someone's going through and you don't know how certain things can impact them. And so it's like, I just feel really important to like remember that you don't know everything about the people that are around you, you know, and it's like important to ask questions, and especially like as a friend or support of someone who's going through something like this.
Right. And like having these intimate conversations, we get to learn so much. Like we get to like hear about those things that are invisible to so many, like it become visible to us. And then it increases like our own compassion and understanding for people.
And I feel like we both like have people in our life that have had like other different types of invisible illnesses as well. And I feel like this gave me a better understanding of them. And I was just surprised I'd never done a podcast before because she was really well spoken and like, she just was so eloquent and described things in a really like descriptive way.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this conversation with her.
So we hope you learned something. You remember that like everyone's fighting some sort of battle and you might not be able to see it on the outside. But as always, we hope you enjoy. And if you have any questions or thoughts about the episode, please comment on the YouTube video or on our Instagram posts. You can rate and review the episodes, that like really actually helps boost us up in the algorithm, I think we'll say. So
yeah.
Without further ado, enjoy this episode. Well, thanks so much for joining us. I'm grateful that so many people in our life are like willing to share their stories. And when we were thinking of people that could come on the podcast, we were thinking of all different like types of grief that can exist. And in your case, that comes with like a medical diagnosis, and I can relate in some ways to that, but I would love for you to just like tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, and what your journey has sort of looked like.
Sure. Well, first of all, yeah, thank you so much. When you sent me a DM, I was like, oh my God, is this the honor of a lifetime? Like, this is so sweet nice that they want to talk to me. God, I don't even know where to start. I live and work in LA with my husband and my dog. I work in the entertainment industry, so it's pretty stressful. And I also have MS, or multiple sclerosis. To kind of give like a background of my diagnosis and kind of where it all started. So I was just a little babe. I was 22. And that's kind of when my symptoms first started happening. It was like April when I was 22, and I was diagnosed when I was 23 in September. So it was a pretty quick turnaround. I feel like there are a lot of people that have MS that it took 10 years to get diagnosed, or like people thought that they were just drunk for like 7 years, and it actually was like their balance was messed up and they didn't know. So
what kind of symptoms did you have in April?
So it definitely was like my doctor at the time in September said, like, you have the most case study of MS like I've ever seen. So I started having symptoms in my eye. It's called optic neuritis. And it's basically when you have inflammation in your optic nerve. And that often is like the first symptom for a lot of people. So for me personally, I have relatives that have MS. And so I kind of knew what it was when I Googled all my symptoms. It's basically like kind of double vision, but for me, it was eye pain. So like if I looked certain directions, it would hurt. I would get a headache if I was like looking down. I specifically remember I went to a concert at like the Disney Hall, and I looked down and I felt super dizzy, and then realized that it hurt when I like moved my eye. So that was like the first thing. And then I went to the doctor, and I think I actually just went straight to a neurologist because, again, I have family history. And so I just kind of expected that may be happening. So I went to the ophthalmologist, and she looked in my eye and she was like, I don't see anything. There's nothing there. You don't have inflammation. She's like, but I can't really see the nerve. Like, I'm an ophthalmologist, or she was an optometrist, actually. She's like, I can't physically see kind of if there is damage. And I said, okay, well, I have relatives that have this. So do you think it could be MS? And she said, it could be a little MS. Maybe it could be a little bit.
What does that mean?
What does that mean?
What's a little MS?
I just panicked, and I was like, I don't know what that means. What does that mean? I remember my now husband was like in Guatemala on a trip with his friends. And I called him being like, I think I have a little MS. And he was like, what does that mean? And I was like, I don't know.
Oh my God.
So then the optometrist recommended me to a neurologist. The neurologist did a scan and found, I think at the time I just had like a couple lesions just on my brain. It was just like a brain scan. And I went to an ophthalmologist, and maybe it was just one lesion, because then I went to an ophthalmologist neurologist, which I didn't know existed. And he very nicely diminished me and basically said, if every single person that I saw with a lesion came in and thought they had MS, 90% of the world would have MS. And I was like, okay, great. Like, I just have a lesion. That's weird. Kind of tried to forget about it.
So he just sort of dismissed the symptoms, even though there was a lesion on your brain.
Yes. And I remember he asked me some questions. He was like, do you have numbness and tingling? Do you have this? And I was like, I don't think so, but I think at this time, like MS is not something that it's not like you get diagnosed and it's like that's the day that you have MS. It
Right.
takes a lot of time. I could have had this for a decade. So I don't know, I didn't necessarily know what was normal or not.
Right.
Like, yes, I have some tingling sometimes, but like, doesn't everyone,
Well, and also, how many relatives do you have with MS?
So enough that, and MS is not genetic. We don't know a lot about it because there's not a cure, and that's the fun part. But they think that there's a lot of different factors that can come into it. Having genetic history definitely doesn't help, but it's most often it's like deep inside your genes and your DNA, and something either triggers it or they're finding a lot of information about like the mono virus, the EBV. And so they know that can trigger MS. And so
Wow.
it could be that like you were predispositioned to have this, and then you got the EBV, you got mono, and then you have MS. Yeah. And the people that I know that have MS, not everyone, but most that I've asked have had mono. So I think they'll probably find more connections.
Did you have mono
in the future? I did. Yeah.
You did.
And like pretty severely when I was in high school. So, I could have had MS ever since I had that.
Right.
We don't really know. Like I remember having sciatica, or what I thought was sciatica, for a decade. And now it's like, it probably wasn't sciatica. It was probably nerve damage, like in my spine, that was causing,
Wow.
all of those things. But yeah, so then I went to a neurologist, and the ophthalmologist neurologist kind of dismissed me. And then I kind of just went back to living my life and just kind of pretending like it didn't exist.
What was that like for you to like have gone through this experience of being told like you might have a little MS, to you have a lesion on your brain, but it's probably not MS and there's nothing we can really do about it? Like, how do you move forward?
I think it was pure denial. I think that like deep in my soul, I knew that something was wrong, and I was just willing to listen to someone telling me that it wasn't a big deal, because
Sure.
I wanted it not to be a big deal.
Yeah.
Right. That's what you want to believe.
Yeah. You just want to believe that everything's fine. And I think I would preface this too of like, at the time I was an assistant to an executive at Sony Pictures, which took up my entire life. And it was hard, and it's just a lot. It's a lot of hours working in entertainment as an assistant. And so I think for me, it was like, I don't have time. I don't have time. Like, you're telling me that I don't have it. Great. I don't have it.
Because it's kind of wild, because you actually went in asking, do I have this specific diagnosis? Like, you kind of knew, which is almost wild. I mean, I guess you said you had a quicker turnaround from symptoms to diagnosis than others, but it wasn't like you just came in and said, I have this eye pain. You literally handed them the diagnosis and they shot it down.
Yeah. And he was so, like, looking back, I think that he probably was patronizing in a little way of like, she doesn't know what she's talking about. She's not a neurologist. Just because she has a relative that has this, it doesn't mean anything. But also, like, he was not an MS doctor. He was not a neurologist. So like a MS neurologist. So he didn't really have the authority to kind of say like, you don't have MS.
So like, would have been lovely for him to maybe give you a referral.
Yeah.
To someone who specializes.
Jordy, I think you can relate to this because you totally also...
Because I went to my doctor that I'd gone to forever, and he's so thorough. And I was like...
maybe.
I felt like he was thorough.
Yeah.
Checked everything out, and he was like, it's highly unlikely it's neurological. Like, we're just going to scan your neck and then go from there. And
go to physical therapy.
There was nothing there. And like, he wouldn't set me up with another neurologist. And then like, I'm in the hospital and he gets a call that I have glioblastoma. And he's like, what? Like, how did that happen? I'm like, oh, I handed this to you on a silver platter. You just didn't like follow up. You weren't diligent enough.
And you had like a lot of neurological symptoms, right?
Yeah.
Like you had tingling and all of those things.
You were having seizures.
Yeah, I was having like little seizures, and I was explaining them to him, and he was just like, I don't know, pinched nerve. I'm like, come on, man. Like, yeah, so I don't know how you feel. I'm curious, moving forward after you have those kinds of experiences with doctors, what is it like for you when you're sort of like vetting a new doctor? What are you looking for?
It's really hard because I just went through a very awful situation with a new neurologist. I think it's multiple things. Like I used to think that I used to love female doctors. Like that is who I just felt more comfortable with. I thought that they kind of looked more holistically at the whole person. And I don't think that anymore. I think it really just depends on the person. You can be an incredible doctor. It doesn't really matter. But what's really frustrating is I do a lot of research. That's what I do to try and find a different doctor. And with MS, there's just kind of like a lot of, just not a lot of knowledge about it. And I think wrong knowledge on the internet. And so like, especially with doctors. And so there was a doctor that I just went to that I saw for a couple of months, and to the point where like I switched to a new doctor and I have like a written complaint just because it was so bad. And when I'm looking for doctors, like I'm just doing research. I'm trying to see what other people have said. And this doctor had a lot of great reviews. It was recommended through the the National MS Society, as like a care system, as like an MS care system, meaning that you have this neurologist, but then you have a care team. If you have bladder problems, you have someone within this network. And if you have stomach problems, I have IBS as well. And so I was really excited about this to be able to have like that kind of gap bridged. Yeah. And it's a lie. Like I went into her office, saying all of these things. And one was told like, yeah, if you have stomach problems, we have a doctor, just go ask them. And I was like, oh, but do you guys talk with each other? And she was like, no, you schedule the appointment and you handle it and then you just do it. And I was like, okay, so This is not like a comprehensive clinic at all.
That's so disappointing.
So disappointing.
Yeah. I think it's also, it's so hard because I am not a doctor but I do have friends that are in the medical space, and I know how exhausting it has been, especially since COVID. I think that I've noticed a shift in kind of the care, and not to say, again, like it's hard to kind of like have a bad experience with a doctor because they do so much, but they also feel like they're not doing enough. So for this specific doctor, urgency is really important with MS. Anytime you have something happen, anytime you need to get a new prescription, like it's just an urgent disease. It's not something, and a lot of diseases are, to be fair, but like, it's not something that you can just sit on. And so, I saw her in November. We had a path forward. I was going to do an infusion. I had not done a couple infusions the past year because, speaking of grief, I had a couple miscarriages. And so leading into it, I told her that I had to, I wanted to get back on my medication very quickly. She said, great, we'll start the infusion. It took her 6 weeks for her to sign my prescription form. Wow.
Oh my God.
6 weeks. Just for me to, and we had talked about it. Like, it's a medication I had been on. It's not something that was, new. And she couldn't sign it. Like, it took me 6 weeks of hounding the office and calling and trying to figure out like how to get this done. So then 6 weeks happened. I couldn't schedule my infusion until I had my prescription. So then it was 8 weeks. Then at the 8-week mark, I got sick. And so you can't have an infusion when you're sick. And so then it took me another month. And so it's basically, I was unprotected for 4 months to 3 months because there was just no urgency. There was no action. Like it just didn't care.
That's really, really terrible.
Yeah. And I've had great experiences. Like I changed to a new doctor that I had seen before when I was the first person that I was diagnosed with. Was awesome and like very factual, matter of fact, but like very quick and urgent and like attentive.
Well, I mean, you see so many different providers. So when like you first started experiencing symptoms, you were like, all right, maybe a little MS, maybe it's nothing. And then what happened?
Yeah. So then my sister got married and we were traveling around Scotland. And I remember I was out to dinner, and all of a sudden when I put my neck down, I got this like shock. Basically, like anytime I did this, it would shock between my neck and go all the way down to my toes.
Wow.
And and I remember thinking, like, if this wasn't so bad, meaning something that was bad, it would probably be a cool sensation. It was just wild. But when I Googled it, it was like, and I'm going to mispronounce it, but it's like Le Hermé, Hermittes. And it's like, first thing is like multiple sclerosis.
Oh, wow.
And then, so I was like, okay, great. So I've got a lesion. I have this eye thing, and now I'm having this pain, this like weird sensation. And I remember telling my sister and my boyfriend at the time, I was like, there's something wrong. Like, I keep on thinking that my phone is vibrating. And I think everyone around you is, wants to also believe that nothing's wrong.
Of course.
So they're like, no, it's fine. Like, you're probably, I don't know, you're probably tired. You're probably, all those things. So then I got back to Los Angeles. And again, I didn't do anything about it. I just ignored it. I was in denial.
Well, and also you weren't just in denial. You had people around you telling you
it's not,
it was okay.
Yeah. I mean, I think what's hard too is like, I know at the time that the neurologist that had the initial scan, I think that she wanted, if I recall, I think she wanted to do a neck and a spine MRI. And I just kept on pushing it off because like, I was like, I don't have those symptoms. I don't have anything. I don't need to continue doing that. And then finally I was like at a barbecue, and I think I try and find like the dark humor in everything. I think that's how we survive. But I was like walking, and I said something to my friend, and I was like, this is really funny. But like anytime I walk for more than 5 feet, I can't feel my feet. Like they start, they're completely numb. And I was like, isn't that weird? Isn't that funny? And she was like, no, that's not funny. You need to go back to your neurologist. And I was like, okay.
So someone was finally sort of saying like, this is not normal. You should go get this checked out.
Yeah. And I think like, especially because it's a friend that is like, we have dark humor together and we say those things to each other, that like, it stopped me in my tracks of someone saying, no, this isn't funny. And I don't know if I was super honest with my boyfriend, now husband. Like I can't really remember, because I'm sure he would have been saying the same thing. So it would be of me to not be completely honest with him, and, have to have a friend be like, this is not okay.
Right. I mean, especially if you're not wanting to like face that reality yourself. Like if you shared it with then it's like, he's
becomes
gonna have
more
you
real.
do something about it.
Yeah. And also like we were so fresh in our relationship that it was terrifying of like, this is new. This is not what you signed up for. Like afraid of, him leaving or having to have those really tough conversations.
So there was like felt like a lot was at stake. It sounds like.
For sure.
For sure. It to be right. So it sounds like you had one new symptom like pop up every few weeks. Is that the case?
Yeah. Yeah, I read, it kind of, there's this part in a book that I've read once where like sometimes a warning is just that, it's a warning, and sometimes it's a billboard. And I feel like it was a billboard every time. It was just like, this is not just something that you can pass by. This is a big thing every moment. And so I think after that, I went to the neurologist, back to the first neurologist. She did a neck and a spine MRI, and things that I was like, okay, this makes sense. Still in denial that like this was MS. I think there was my mom was like, is it B12? Like my husband also like tried so
B12?
hard to find like a B12 deficiency, because sometimes those symptoms can be very related.
Wow.
Yeah.
I did
it's
not
like
know that.
Tingling, fatigue, headaches, like there's so many things. MS is also a diagnosis by exclusion. It's not like you don't take a blood test and then you have MS. It's like you do your scans and then you do a blood test to rule out everything else. So I think there was a lot of hope in my family of like, my mom was like, it could be Lyme. It could be like all of these things. Like, I think in between that period, I went to like a naturopathic doctor that was like, it's Lyme disease. And I did like 3 months of antibiotics because we thought maybe it would be something else. I don't know if I explained what MS is yet. I don't know if I did.
Well, you can do it now.
Yeah, go.
Perfect.
Go
So MS is an autoimmune disease where your immune system attacks the protective coating of your nerves. So you have something called the myelin sheath that surrounds your nerves, and then your immune system attacks that portion, which creates nerve damage. And since nerves are the things that transmit all the information between your brain and your body and all those things, it can create a multitude of different symptoms. And that's kind of why everyone with MS kind of is different from the other. Like, you're not going to find the same person with the same disease diagnosed on the same day and have everything similar. It's just, it's too different. You have lesions of other places.
And are lesions the common symptom that ties everyone together?
Yeah, I would say that's like the first step in trying to figure out like if you have MS. I know I have had a friend who has MS that did a lumbar puncture. And I can't remember the exact scientific reason of finding, but I think that there are certain like responses based on this lumbar puncture that can also help more definitively say MS. For me, my case was so standard that it was not a question of like, I don't think you need to do a lumbar puncture. We're pretty positive. Yeah.
Got it. I only like know MS. This is because like we learn this in graduate school. The way that I would remember it for test is that MS and myelin sheath.
Yes.
Were the same initials.
Yep.
And
yeah.
I remember that too.
That's like all I really know about MS. So it's just like so, I mean, it's so terrible and also just so like interesting that like that there are other relatives that you have with it, but they say that there's no genetic cause. And then you have like these symptoms that are popping up, and it was like a billboard each time, but then you kind of got accustomed to it. Like, it sounds like you were still living your life at the time.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely was. I think in some ways, like, I didn't feel like I had a choice, like life goes on. I've heard Jordy say this a lot on the podcast of like, when stuff happens, like you just have to keep doing it. Like, life doesn't stop, like I remember when I was first diagnosed and I told my friends, like I had a close group of friends that I told, and one asked, when are you going to be in a wheelchair? And one asked, which at the time made me laugh. Like, I think just because like there's just no knowledge, people don't know a lot about it. And then two, someone said, when are you going to quit your job? And I was like, oh no, I can't do that. I need insurance and I have a life.
So they like already made these assumptions about what this disease was going to like do or take from you.
Yeah. And I think that's why to this day, I've had this for 9 years and I am still so nervous to tell people about it because people have predispositions of what they think it is. I think a lot of times when you see MS in TV shows, it is a death sentence, and they do that a lot. And it's just hard to see something like that. But I think it's just that people just don't know what it is. They think of MS as like, oh yeah, my great aunt had that 20 years ago and she died. And you're like, thank you so much.
Yes.
Right.
Very nice.
So unhelpful.
Not helpful. Not helpful at all. I want to know what, if you don't mind sharing, like what your symptoms sort of look like.
On a day-to-day.
On a day-to-day basis, how they impact your everyday life.
So I would say the biggest thing is the fatigue. Like on a day-to-day matter, it's just, I am constantly exhausted. There's not a point in my life where I like feel like I have a lot of energy. There's things that you can take to supplement for that, like different medications and stuff, which have certainly help, but there's also side effects to it, as every drug. So for me, that's really bad. It happens oftentimes. So the other thing about MS is there's different kinds of MS. So for me, I have relapsing remitting, which basically means that you go through periods of flare-ups, and then in theory you have recovery where you're back to your normal, or
interesting,
you're back to a slightly different normal. I have, over the course of 9 years, I think I've had like 4 relapses. And so, I've never been back to better before, every time I've had a relapse, it's not like I've gotten, I recover in a certain sense, but those symptoms can still come back up depending on what's going on in my life. If I'm stressed, if I'm sick, if all of those things. So, the fatigue is the biggest thing.
And is the fatigue from medications, or is the fatigue from the illness itself?
It's from the illness itself. Yeah. So that's probably one of the biggest ones. I think I get something called the MS hug, which basically, it sounds really cute, but it's not. It feels like an elephant is just like sitting on your chest constantly, kind of like there's a band that's just like, kind of like when you get short of breath a little bit and you can't fully take a breath, that's how it feels. And it's
that's a terrible feeling.
Horrible feeling. I had it I came back to work yesterday from a vacation, and like the entire day at the office sitting there just like with this like horrific and like I'm not going to tell people about that, necessarily. So that's a big one. I still get numbness and tingling in my feet. So if I really walk any further than like, I don't know, probably like 10 feet, my feet will go tingly and a little bit numb. Not to the point where I'm tripping, unless I'm going through a relapse, then that happens a lot. But it's manageable. I think at this point I've kind of forgotten about it, to be honest. Just because, exactly.
It's interesting because I think I thought of MS as a disease that you could see, and all of the symptoms you're talking about that are the most disruptive are invisible to the outside world.
Yes. It is an invisible disease for sure. And I think that's one of the hardest parts of any kind of chronic illness when you have something like that, because people are like, oh, you don't look sick. They're like, you're fine. You don't look any different.
How do you respond? Like when... I know for me, for example, like being tired is like a really hard thing for me to navigate, because and you're an active person, you snowboard and you go traveling and you like to do all sorts of things. And then when you feel tired, it like makes me feel less like myself, which can be really depressing. And so then when people are asking you like, oh, like, how is your day? And you've just been like resting all day, it feels not great to share. And I'm wondering how it feels for you to share, like when you're in a flare, how you like sort of stay connected to people and feel like you have, something to bring to the table in terms of conversation.
Yeah. I think my self-worth is really tied to my MS, which sucks. I think before I tell people that I have MS in person, like I feel like I have to prove myself first, which is a very shitty feeling. Like I have a close group of friends at work, and I've worked with them for over 1.5 years. And I think I just told them like 2 weeks ago, because I need people to like know me and know who I am. And especially at work, like how much I can do without kind of that association. So I think I would say like, it also just depends on the day. Like I definitely have like Camille moods where I'm just not able to get past it. Like the fatigue is so bad that I can't get out of bed that day.
I feel like it's not a Camille mood. It's an MS
It's
thing.
an MS
For
mood.
sure.
I'm like, it's not you. I feel like, no, we can't say it's a Camille mood. It's an MS
For
mood.
sure. For sure. This is why you guys are the professionals. I think it's also hard to, there's so much guilt associated with it as well, because like when I was first diagnosed, one of the like kind of hardest moments was like the initial kind of diagnosis, when they said like, not even in the office, like basically it was so clear cut. When you have kind of this background, you have to present everything to the MS neurologist, and then you have to be like accepted to be viewed from them. So like, that's not a good sign, right? If they're accepting you to review your paperwork. Exactly. It's a club that, no one wants to be in, but, she was looking at my stuff, and it was so concrete that she started going into the medication. She was like, looking at your brain, these are the things, and so these are the drugs that I would suggest taking. And I was like, oh wait, so I have MS. Sorry. So I have it. And she was like, oh yes, you have MS.
Wow.
And she's like, there's a couple things that we can continue to rule out, but like, this is very clear cut. You need to go on medication.
What went through your mind?
Yeah.
At the time I had my dad and my sister there, and I remember just thinking, in that exact moment, I felt relief because I was like, okay, now I know what's wrong. I've had these symptoms for forever. I've always had fatigue problems. I've had kind of issues with other things. And so like now there's a reason for it. So I think the exact moment of diagnosis, there was relief. It wasn't until after that I was Googling all of the drugs that I would have to take, because, you know, for MS, there's no cure, but you take something called DMDs, or disease modifying drugs. And those are helping you to prolong how well you're doing and hopefully stop relapses from happening. And even in the 9 years that I've had this, there has been so much advancement on drugs. Like when I first started my meds, they were like, you take this med twice a day. They give you face, like basically flushes every time you took the drug. And it looked like you had a massive sunburn. And it also wreaked havoc on your stomach. And so like reading these things, and also there's like a very rare, with a lot of DMDs called, there's a rare side effect that could happen called PML, which I don't know the name, like the acronym meaning, but it's basically like a insane MS brain infecting like side effect that can, it's fatal. And so, reading all of these drugs. Yes.
Like what? Like you can take this med, which will help your MS, but then you might die.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. So like reading all of those meds, I think that's when it hit me. And that's when I felt, I like remember calling my mom and just repeating like, I can't do this. I can't do this. I can't do this. Just because it was so bad. And then that night I remember too, came over, my now husband.
I was just going to ask about that relationship at that time.
Yeah. I mean, and I knew each other in college and we'd been friends for a long time. So I would say that I was very lucky in that it wasn't just like we met super briefly and then I was diagnosed. Like we had kind of a history of friendship before that, which was good. But I remember like sobbing on shoulder and just telling him that he didn't have to do this. Like if he wanted an out, that he could take the out, because this was not what he signed up for. We had only been together for a couple months. You know, we weren't married. We didn't have any kind of ties in that way. And like he could. And I think that was another really hard conversation, especially just tying back to that worthiness of like, you are such a wonderful person. You deserve someone better. Like you deserve to not be with someone that's sick, and all of the feelings that kind of came with that. And I think at the time he was like, I'm going to just make you stop talking right now. Please stop. He was very, very supportive.
But I can relate to that piece too of like,
even married with kids,
even married,
you have that thought.
Like, right. Married with a kid. I'm like, Hank, like you did not sign up for this, but it's like, but you did, right? It's like, because nobody knows what could happen. Anything can happen at any moment. And it's like, you're always just choosing to actively be with that person. And so it's like in the moment, I feel like it makes sense to think like, if you want an out, you can take it. But realistically, like bad things are going to happen to everyone at some point in a relationship. And when you sign up for one, it's in the good times and the bad. And
I mean, I remember also when I lost my first daughter, I was like, I may never be able to give my husband a child, right? There's so much on like, it's me.
Yes. You like make it your identity. It's your fault.
Yeah.
Like, even though it's something that's happening to you, it feels like we own it in some way.
Right. Like none of us signed up to have MS, to have brain cancer, to have a baby with a lot of medical issues and I terminated, like I did make that decision. So I think it was, it's hard in relationships when other people are involved.
Yeah.
And like to be only a couple of months into a relationship, I can imagine, like how scary and awful that is.
Yeah, and I think a big feeling of my everyday is still the guilt of not him like staying with me. Like I'm great. He's also very lucky, but it's also the idea of like anytime I'm having a bad day, how much he has to pick up, and he is so great that he does that so graciously. And he doesn't resent me. He doesn't, he resents the MS, I'm sure, at times, but he doesn't resent me as a person. But it's still so hard not to feel that way when people have to pick up the slack because you're not able to do it. And especially when it's something that you can't control, right? Like this was thrown at me, anytime an illness is thrown at someone.
Right. And like, you're also being proactive in that, like you're doing everything that you possibly can that exists to try and maintain, do they call it like remission?
Yeah. It's weird because it's technically called relapsing remitting. So yeah, like you're trying to exist in that remission period. But I think what's just so hard is, every single day is different. Every single moment is different. Like I can wake up feeling like I'm, totally fine. And then I get too stressed at work and I come home and I can't see. Like I have, absolutely no vision in my eye because of my optic neuritis. So, I think it's also just like the change is so hard and the unpredictability for those around me too. Because there are some things where like I know the ramifications of what I do. Like I think what's shitty in a lot of ways is that most happy things that happen are followed by exhaustion or it's followed by a bad day. And I think that is also really hard because I think, you come back from a vacation and everyone's tired, everyone's trying to get back into it, but it's like I am immobile. I have to be on my bed. And yes, the vacation was great, but now I'm suffering the consequences.
Yeah.
And those
like your recovery time is a lot longer than the typical person. Yeah. When you're exerting a lot of energy.
What do those, when you're not in remission, when you're in a flare, what does that look like for you? And how long does that typically last?
So the last flare that I had, Again, it all depends on the person. For me, the last one that I had, I think it was last year or maybe the year before. I swear that my memory has become the size of a squirrel. And this happens a lot with MS, and I'm sure with anything of like, is it MS or am I forgetting things because it's MS? Or am I forgetting things because I'm human and, humans forget things?
Well, to give you just a validating answer to that, Jordy knows this, that like I forget things all the time. And we were in San Jose a couple weeks ago and we were walking to the car, which it was the completely wrong direction. We had parked there like the day before and I was taking us like 10 minutes away. And Jordy was the one who's like, Erica, where are you taking us? And I'm like, if I was the one with brain cancer, I would be really concerned. Right? Like, oh no, I'm losing my memory. But that was just a normal human forgetting thing.
Yeah. I think this goes back to like something that I think about a lot, which is just that like inability to like trust your body, and like how hard that is, to like not know what's actually happening and what's the disease. And it's so unpredictable, and it just makes me feel like I'm not an expert in myself and in my body. And I feel like that was something I really felt strongly before I got diagnosed. And so that's like another loss, right? It's just like feeling like you're the expert on yourself. Now it's like, I don't know, could be anything.
Yeah. And I think like for me too, it's a lot of, I think in order to have survived the past how many years with this, I have to kind of be in denial every day and just forget that I have it as much as I possibly can.
Yeah.
Like I remember in the first couple years, it was like every moment of every single day. Like I created an Instagram and I talked about MS like super openly on it, and I wanted to help people, and I was super active in like the Reddit subreddit for MS. And then I just like, I couldn't do it anymore. It just, I couldn't balance it with my work. I just had to choose, you know, certain things. And then I think since then, like I'm really reminded when my physical limitations are tested, you know, but then like other things, you know, will kind of remind me, and then it kind of comes back into it. So it's like every day I'm pretending like I don't have MS until it reminds me. And it reminds me every day. Like there's not a moment where a day where I kind of forget. But yeah.
But during the flare-ups, it sounds like you're more debilitated, or like what?
Yes.
What do the flare-ups?
So basically a flare-up is kind of like the rule of thumb is that when you have MS, if you have new symptoms that go on for longer than 48 hours, that's when you need to talk to your neurologist, and most likely you would get an MRI and see if there's any new activity. So you can, I've had certain doctors do this and certain doctors haven't. Basically putting an IV with contrast. And so they can physically see if it's like an old lesion. I know, Jordy, you've kind of talked about that, where it's like if it's an old lesion or if it's a new lesion. And if it's a new lesion, it can light up compared to like older ones. I again, like I've had doctors kind of have different opinions of if it matters or not. Like we're not going to put you through an IV with contrast because it doesn't matter if it's an old or a new one. You still haven't, like, we can tell it's new if there's a new placement, right? So like, it doesn't matter if it's not active, it's still there. So anyway, if you have those symptoms for longer than 48 hours, you'll get an MRI. And then typically if the symptoms are really bad, they'll put you on a steroid, treatment to try and bring down the inflammation. Since my first diagnosis, for my first relapse, I had a pretty bad reaction to steroids. So I don't do that anymore. If anything, like a steroid infusion, I don't do well with. And so it doesn't help you. It doesn't like fix your symptoms. It doesn't make you better. It just, in theory, will help shorten the duration of your relapse. And so for me, it hasn't necessarily been worth it. But a relapse can last anywhere from like, I think I've had a very minor one where it's been like a couple of months, or when I was first diagnosed, it's really long. Yeah. Or when I was first diagnosed, like my eye started going wonky in April, and I think I didn't get like recovery from it until like a year and a half. And then when that happened, my other eye, I had a relapse, and then my other eye went wonky. So,
so there's not really like a break. It's just like some symptoms lessen and then others sort of get worse, it sounds like.
Yeah, I think, and some of them will like disappear necessarily. Like I haven't had Le Hermé since I think like 8 years ago. That symptom has never come back, which is great. We love that. But then, there's other ones that like I can tell, mainly for me. So the last relapse that I had, I was like a fun thing with MS too that can affect a lot of people is bladder issues, and any kind of like, because you get inflammation in that region too. Yeah. And so I was noticing when I like went down to pee that I had numbness like in all the way from my lower back, like everything into like my butt and my bladder, and everything was just like super numb, and just like I couldn't feel it when I peed, which was very weird.
Oh, yeah, that's awful.
Yeah, very uncomfortable. And so
I would imagine you wouldn't want to like go out if you're having these symptoms that are just so debilitating.
Yeah, I think again, like it's so hard because like when I was diagnosed, I went back to work that day. Like I took my lunch break to go to the doctor's office, and then I just went back to work. And because of the industry I'm in, like that is what I do. So I think I'm really privileged, and I'm really lucky that I have the ability to do that. Like MS is so different for so many people, and I know a lot of people that are more disabled than I am. So I'm very lucky for what I have. That also makes me feel guilty a lot of the time. But
it's been a theme in everyone we've talked to this week.
Yeah.
Saying that, yeah, everyone this week has basically said, like, because their situation isn't the worst possible version of the situation, it's hard to balance, like, the gratitude and the guilt.
Yes. That is something I suffer with every day.
Yeah. Well, you're not alone, just so you know.
Well, that's good and bad.
Yeah, it's sad, but it's also nice to know you're not alone in it.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I think like recovery from a relapse is, again, it just takes time. It's just kind of what your symptoms are and, how long your body needs. Again, if you don't take steroids, it can kind of take a little bit longer, but, you know, I think again, like the hardest thing is I have these symptoms that I have now. And like right now, for example, I am really exhausted. So I feel like I have the flu. That's like a big thing. Kind of like when you are like the day before you know you have the flu, where you just feel off and tired. Yeah. I would say that that's like 90% of my day, where it's just a little bit off. Yeah. And so I think that, you know, that is obviously draining. And I forgot where I was going with that.
I was just even thinking, like,
yeah, we have lots of questions for you, so it's okay.
Yeah, I was even thinking that, like, you just said you shared with your coworkers like 2 weeks ago that you have MS, and I'm like, so you're operating 90% of your day as if you have the flu, and like no one knows it except for you, and then like the expectation is for you to perform at 100 and show up at 100, and like I wonder what that experience is like for you.
I think it's really hard. I think it feels very isolating in a lot of ways. Like my therapist that I had previously, she was the person that told me, like, I think you should tell people at work, people that you trust, so that, like, you know, it doesn't mean that you're going to be talking to them every day about it, but like it's hard when one, not knowing, like I work in an industry that's so hectic that it's hard to know what is normal and what I am feeling. Like I am underwater, I'm drowning at work, things are crazy. Are you feeling that way, or is it MS? And it's hard to kind of like, if you don't talk to someone about it, it's hard, you know? I think that's also why when I was first diagnosed, I was very open. Like I told all of my friends, I told a lot of my family, just because I feel like if you keep things inside, it is isolating. You know, it's a very isolating disease. It is invisible. And so just kind of going on to your day to day, and, you know, when people don't know, I think, but again, that's part of the reason why I don't tell people, where it's like, I don't want you to see me in that way. You know, I want you to kind of have this idea of me.
Yeah.
And I think too, in the corporate world, it's really shitty, but I work with amazing people, and I believe the best in people. But when you are in such a competitive landscape, you're going to think about how it impacts you, you know? Sure. And I think that's only human. I think that's natural for someone to think that. So I think that's a hard thing for me to think about, is like, if someone that I work with really regularly, if they know that I have MS, then if I forget a deadline, right? If I forget something, which hasn't happened, but like if I forget something, are they going to think that it's because I'm human, or is it they going to think that I'm declining because I have MS? And so I think it's just a balance of trying to find people that you trust, that you know aren't going to think of you in that way. But yeah, it's isolating.
Well, there's a lot of grief that comes along with not just the diagnosis itself and the drugs that you take and the side effects. There's so many, like, you know, it impacts you in so many ways. And how does that impact planning for life? And you had mentioned that you've had a few miscarriages, which is terrible, like, for anyone. But how does MS just impact the way you live?
I think there's two things. I think there's something that I've had to remind myself is, like, just because something bad happens to you doesn't mean that more bad things won't. Not to say that they will. It's not like you have a cloud following you that's bad things, but it's just that, like, life is really shitty, life is unfair, and these things just happen. I think for it's similar to what I said before of like for every exciting thing, bad things, like your recovery may happen, like a bad day probably follows a good day in terms of fatigue. Anytime I get like exciting news, the bad usually follows that immediately. So for every single job that I've ever had since diagnosis, it's not, yes, everyone is like, actually, okay, I got this job. Can I do this? It's like, can my MS survive this? Can I survive in this career? I think for like family planning, it's something that has been so incredibly hard to go through because MS impacts everything. So for me, when we decided that we wanted to start trying to figure out like timelines and everything like that, had to plan around my medication. So like having to plan.
Sorry, just really quick. Is it you can't be on the medication if you're trying to conceive?
So there's just certain times. So like specifically for like the infusion, they recommend you to be like 3 months out from your infusion. For me, I didn't feel comfortable with that. I wanted to wait longer, but then the longer that you wait, the more that you're not protected and the likelihood that you could have a relapse.
What does it mean to not be protected? Is it that your immune system is, I guess
right back to normal?
Protected.
Yeah, so like the drugs for MS are immune suppressing drugs. So it's basically like depleting everything so that you don't attack yourself, so that my brain doesn't eat itself. And so when your infusion or when your medication kind of wears out, whatever your half-life is, then you're not protected, that your immune system has, probably gone back to what's normal or close to that. And then you're just, if stress happens, if you get an infection, like all of those things, then you're more likely to have a relapse. Something that's very weird is that most people that have MS, when they get pregnant, they have, you're kind of protected. There's a lot of studies around it, but there is something that kicks in, I think it's in your second or third trimester, that protects you in a certain way of like being on a DMD while you're pregnant. But then you have an 80% chance of having a relapse after you have a kid. And so
like the stakes are really high in terms
stakes
of
are very high.
Yeah, like choosing to expand your family means like potentially putting yourself at risk for health complications.
Yeah, and I think it's like a twofold. It's like, one, it's trying to plan everything and make sure that you're taking the right medications, that you're not waiting too long, you're protected, but you're not. And then two, it's like just the idea of having a kid while I am this fatigued, knowing that like I will never have more energy than I do now. And I luckily, like I have examples where people have MS and they have kids and they're really active and they're great and they function pretty well. But I also have examples where someone had a relapse while they were pregnant. And ever since, they have little kids and it's exhausting. And I know that. And so that's really hard, like in itself. I think too, like everything that happened last year when I had my first miscarriage, I had complications with the surgery that I had to have. I had the DNC and it didn't work the first time. And so I ended up in the ER. And again, like doctors not understanding the severity of like what it means. Like they're like, oh, if it didn't work, you just need to take some time and maybe it just needs to like come out of you, naturally, get out of your system. And it's like, yeah, but I can't have like a foreign body in me that could lead to an infection, because if I have an infection, then I will have a relapse.
I mean, I think even if without MS, having like retained, like having like retained like stuff in your body
that's traumatic.
Is so traumatic. And then to have this layer of like, to have MS and have doctors like not understand, you just like don't get adequate care.
Yeah.
Which it sounds like can impact your life in so many ways.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's the thing. I think that's the hardest. It's just that I feel like I said that sentence like 7 times. And MS is hard in general.
Because
But
it
I
is
think
hard.
that's, yeah. But I think that's one of the things is that like everything that happens in your life, MS impacts. And so it happy, sad, whatever, traumatic, like MS makes it worse in every
Yeah.
way.
Yeah.
So especially last year, like just the logistics, the recovery time period, just all of the different things that go into it. It's just MS affects everything. It affects every
Yeah.
single moment. And I think some things are easier to figure out. Like if I, for example, go on a vacation, I know that I'm going to feel awful. It's going to take me a while to recover from that. And that is a sacrifice, but I love to travel and that's important to
Yeah.
me. And so that's what I do. There are things where like I I knew once I had my first miscarriage and once things started happening that like it was delayed, there were just issues with it that I knew that it was going to affect my MS. So I
Yeah.
can kind of prepare myself in that way of like I've been through this enough, but it's also shitty because it's like okay, this
But
thing
you
is
have to do that.
happening and then in 2 months I know that I'm going to feel worse and that something else is probably going to happen.
Yeah. There's so
So it
much
just
grief
impacts.
involved. Yeah, and like how do you plan
Yeah.
your life? Like how do you plan your life like that, right? Like
Yeah.
knowing that okay, I'm going to go through something hard and it's going to take me time to like emotionally recover, but then like physically I I'm going to there's going to be a toll taken on my body. And it's like
Yeah.
and then to like gear up to try and do that again. Like that I mean that's hard regardless of MS, but with that on top of it, it just seems like, like how do you go about making those decisions?
Yeah, I think too, like I was thinking about grief and I was thinking how uh I think that when I was younger, I thought of grief in terms of like bereavement periods. Like in the
Mm.
corporate world, something bad happens and then you grieve for a week, you go off of work and then you're done. And then
If
you
only it were that
yeah,
easy.
right? And I think when I was like thinking about it, I think having a chronic illness means that you have chronic grief. Like that is
Hmm.
just every day is full of grief. I think for me, I have to make a choice every day not to live in that grief and every moment not to live in that grief. I think
Yeah.
some days are easier than normal. I think some days I'm feeling okay and I can look past it. Other days I'm not, and I want to sit in the shower and cry, and
Yeah.
Yeah.
for however long. Um, but I think it's just very hard when the choice feels like it's not a choice. It's like this happened and you have to live with this constantly. I also think like grief in general, I was comparing like the grief that I've had with my MS to the miscarriages, and I think just like any grief I've ever experienced has been chronic, and it sounds like that is not a abnormal
No,
thing.
it's so
Yeah.
normal. I think
So
people just don't
normal.
talk about it, but I it also just compounds. So like when you're grieving something, it's not like it's in silo. It's been impacted by all of the previous grief experiences. And both of you know that you will be experiencing the rest of your, like the illness for the rest of your life.
Right.
That's just really fucked up.
I know, right? It's really
It
fucked
is.
up.
I wanted to know too, just as I, this is just in general that Jordy and I have experienced of people don't know how to support us when we're going through our own grieving. And for something like MS that is invisible, that you could actually have a coworker for 8 years and them not know, how would you like people to support you?
Oh God, great question. Difficult answer.
It is. Yeah, it's hard.
I think people checking in is is honestly just the only thing that I need a lot of times, because not a lot of people can relate, and people can say necessarily the wrong things and things like that. But I think just someone understanding at the capacity that they can. Like I know
Yeah.
that no one will know exactly what I'm going through, but just being there and I think just for me, like for them to know what I am going through makes me feel supported because I don't tell everyone. The people that I do tell, I love and I feel very comfortable with. And so it's comforting for me just that they know that like I'm suffering a little bit less in silence.
Yeah.
Because I think especially in those like really hard moments, there's nothing that they can really say, you know, it's like, I think, when you have grief for a reason, when I mean, like I've had depression for most of my life and there hasn't always been a reason for it.
Yeah.
But so much of the grief that I feel now, there is such a strong reason that, that there's not a lot people can say. And so I think it's just like having them know is enough.
Like showing
in a weird
up.
way.
Like continuing to show up. I think people get like so afraid of saying the wrong thing that then they go silent. And I understand that. But then when you talk, like all three of us would be like, show up.
Yeah.
Just show up. Just check in and have like zero expectations, but give yourself to just show up and check in.
1,000%.
Yeah.
Like, my favorite thing that I hear from like Erica and our other best friend is like when they're just like, this is so stupid. Like, why did you have to get the worst kind of brain cancer? It's just so dumb. You know, like someone just sitting in that with you, no one else is going to say that to me because they probably think it would be offensive, but it's what I'm thinking. And so it feels so validating to have someone else be like, hey, Camille, it like really is stupid that you have lesions in your brain and your spine. Like that just is really dumb and I hate it. You know, and that just feels good. And people are scared to say that and be blunt, but we're using this platform to say, just say the thing because we're already thinking it.
Yeah, I think people like they want to find solutions. I think a lot of times, like I know my husband wants to find a solution all the time. And something that he has said a lot is like, yeah, that sucks. Mm-hmm. That sucks that you're going through that. And because there's nothing else to say. Like, you're not going to cure me. I don't need to hear that I'm going to be okay. It just helps that you know. Like I remember when I had my miscarriage, like I have a close group of friends and like one of the guys in our group like singled me out at a party and just said like, hey, I'm sure you don't want to talk about it. I just really want you to know that sucks. And I'm sorry that happened. And it just meant like the world. Cause it's so not, you know, we don't necessarily talk about those things, you know, and I'm sure it was uncomfortable for him to say something, but it was just the fact that like he acknowledged it and like knew, you know, that it means a lot.
It's so nice when people get it right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Feels good.
It really is. I had a question and it slipped my mind and then we'll ask our final question, but it wasn't a question. I just wanted to share this with you because, and I may have said this in like a public forum at some point, but I don't remember, but I just wanted you to know that I obviously didn't have the information when I got pregnant that like I was going to be chronically ill or terminally ill. And I honestly think if I had had that information, I would have chosen probably not to have a child because of all the things you were talking about, like feeling worried about the future and feeling fatigued and being able to like be the version of myself that I want to be and show up in all those ways. And I'm so glad that I did it anyways. And I think like having that information is sometimes harder because you're making the decision knowing that it's going to be difficult. But I just want to be here to tell you that it's still worth it. And I'm grateful that I didn't choose not to, you know, because it's been such a bright spot in so much shit. And there's many ways you can show up for your child and for your family, and physical is just one of them. So
thank you.
Yeah.
I'm going to repeat that as a mantra every time I'm going to sleep for the next couple of months.
I just wanted to give you that like, even if you have the information that something's going to be hard, like it doesn't mean it isn't worth doing.
Yeah.
So yeah. And
Thank you.
with that, we'll ask our final question, which we ask everyone, which is, what would you say to yourself, or what would you want yourself to know in like the deepest, darkest depths of your grief, the griefiest moments you've had? What would you want to say to her?
Oh, I think that you're enough.
Yeah.
I think when you have a chronic illness, you feel so weak all the time, and you feel like things have been taken away from you so much. And I think I try and tell myself that in the deepest, darkest times, but I don't listen to myself. And I wish that, that I would just tell you that I would tell myself that I'm enough, and I don't need to prove myself. I don't need to prove that I'm more than MS, because I know that I am. Just knowing that I'm enough.
Oh, you are enough, Camille.
You are enough. And like, just objectively, obviously, sitting here with you and like just knowing you, I mean, you're doing so much in spite of having this thing that makes your life really hard, you know? So it's like, you're not just enough, you're extraordinary.
Thank you.
Yeah. And sitting here and talking to you for the first time, I'm like, you're just such a beautiful person. And like, I feel grateful to have been able to talk with you. And I know that others will just be able to, like, I don't know, we'll just be able to hear your story and feel inspired by your bravery to come and be so vulnerable and share when you like don't have it all figured out, because that's a hard thing to do.
Yeah. And I feel like, when I first was kind of more open about it, and I was first talking to people, and I was online, and I had an Instagram, like connecting with people, and like, I remember someone from like the UK had reached out to me and was like asking me about, she had just been diagnosed, and like, how does she go on this process? And I remember thinking like, well, that's why we talk about it, right? Like we talk about it so people aren't alone, so that people, feel like if they are in a world of uncertainty, that there's someone that they can talk to or reach out to that has more certainty. So thank you guys so much for kind of having this space.
Oh my gosh, of course. We're honored that you came here to share with us.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
You're gonna have to start.
Erica is eating Swedish candy. But then we realized we don't have our microphones because Hank, as we mentioned in the beginning, anytime we could throw Hank under the bus, he took them home with him to LA. And so we're using our phone to record audio, but we have to be like pretty still and quiet, so like chewing candy isn't really on the table for these recordings.
Right, exactly.
Which I'm sure you're all really sad about. It's such a lovely sound.
Such a lovely sound. Well, anyway, I hope you all enjoyed the conversation. And she was just like such a lovely, I've never met her before, and you're friends with her, and Hank is friends with her. So it's just like a really lovely conversation to have. And I learned a lot because I really knew very little about MS.
A lot about MS.
I think I believed like the assumptions, like the way that it's portrayed in the media, but like didn't really know how it affects someone day to day.
The things that she was saying, like, that people would ask her, like, oh, when are you going to be in a wheelchair? Or like, when are you going to have to stop working? Like, I think those were the sort of assumptions that we also maybe had about MS.
Right.
Like, you maybe can't be a high functioning person and also have this disease.
Yeah.
But that was not true.
Not true. And also when she was talking about when you have an invisible illness, you have the choice to share or not share. And she chooses most times not to share.
Yeah.
And I thought it was wild that she had just told her coworkers like 2 weeks prior to our conversation. Like no one had any idea. Like I just don't know how you don't like share that. I think because like with you, I share your diagnosis to everyone.
Yeah.
I feel like with Shayla, my baby loss, like I share that just like all the time.
Did say like in the beginning when she was diagnosed, she was posting stuff and like was more involved in the community. And I guess one of the questions that we didn't really get to ask her was like, what changed?
Right.
Like, was there some sort of incident or conversation, or was it just that like you weren't wanting to focus that much on it. Like,
yeah,
I think there's
true.
like so many things. I feel like in the beginning, it's like it consumes your whole life and then it like becomes part of your life.
Mm-hmm.
And so we didn't really get into that. So we'll have to ask for that sometime. But for anybody who's out there that like has some sort of like medical or like physical or mental illness, I'm wondering, like, is it something that you share and like you're more straightforward about it, or is it something that you keep to yourself until someone's gotten to know you and then you
right
share?
Okay, so for you, Jordy, like even though you're online, you're making videos, you're sharing, you do not share.
No,
like
really.
When we were, Alex, Jordy, and I, we were flying back from Penn, Philadelphia, when you had your doctor appointment, and we had seats all next to each other, but we got on the plane and they like switched up our seats.
Yeah.
So Alex was on like a completely different row, and then you and I were sitting next to each other. But then Alex was really afraid of flying, so I was like, you know what, I'll sit up in the front of the plane. Alex, you can sit with Jordy.
Yeah.
And then apparently Alex announces to the entire plane, like, our best friend has brain cancer.
She's like, is someone not going to switch with us? And like, there's just silence. And I'm like hiding my head, like, please don't look at me. And then she's like, really?
Yeah.
Really? No one's going to say anything. Okay. And then this really kind gentleman did end up switching with us and we all got to sit together. But yeah, it's like, I always tell them, like, I wear my like find a cure hat, like, one, because it's comfy and cute, but also two, it's like, no one's going to ask me anything.
Right.
Like, I'm putting it out there. Hey, like, I'm unwell.
Yes.
And like, you can ask me questions, but also like,
Please don't.
I'm answering your question. And I think that might just come from, I don't think it's like diagnosis specific. I think it's, I don't like small talk.
Yeah.
So I just like would prefer to not talk to strangers.
That's totally fair. That's totally, and
Like, you would strike up a conversation on a plane with a random person.
Yes.
I would like to avoid that at all costs.
well, Alex and I did. I
Right.
want like people, like, I wanted him to ask me, like, what are you doing here?
Like, why are you in Philadelphia?
Yeah.
So that you could share with him the story. And I'm like, literally get on the plane, put my headphones on, like, hood on. I'm out of commission. Do not talk to me.
Right. So anyway,
I'm a mean person.
yeah, no, you're not. Like, yeah. So like she also, like, this is her first time sharing her story,
Yeah.
and she did a wonderful job for never sharing before.
She was like so well spoken and eloquent and answered all of our questions. And yeah, I just feel like I know like a lot of people that will hear this and feel really seen and heard, and
Yeah.
her story will resonate with them. And okay, I'm going to include it. And then if we have to take it out, we can, because I haven't asked her, forgot to ask her. So you've listened to the episode, right? And like, we've shared, like, we felt like Camille was so like open and forthcoming, and like, it was such a wonderful conversation. And last week we got an email from her and she said, hey, I've been giving it some thought. I don't know when you're planning to release the episode, but I think I'd prefer to leave like my full name out of it, because I really want people to get to know me for me before like casting any judgments or preconceived notions about me. Like, I just don't want my diagnosis to be a thing that like comes before me.
Yeah.
In both like personal and professional world, right? And it's like, once you put something online, like,
It's there forever.
it's there forever and it's permanent. And of course, we absolutely respect that. And whenever any of our guests want to have something edited out or anything, we oblige. But I thought it was like such an interesting request. Like, I wasn't expecting it, I guess. And I think it surprised me because it just made me feel sad that our world is set up like that.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Like, it made me feel sad that someone as lovely and wonderful and who has so much to offer has to like feel maybe shame or hide parts of herself that like are a big part of her life.
Well, I think there's truth to it, right? Like,
There
people in
is.
society like do judge, they do cast this judgment and assumptions. Like, I get not in a professional
Yeah.
sense of like what you put out there, people see and they
For sure.
use, and it's really shitty.
Yeah. And I was just like, that just sucks. It sucks that that's like the world that we live in.
Yeah.
You know? And so that was my main takeaway from it, was like, it just made me sad that that was even a thought she had to have.
Right.
To be like, yeah, I really want to share my story. And also, I don't want my story to define me in the future. And I get that.
Oh, I mean,
100%.
We put this out here and it gives me a lot of anxiety of, I guess I'm in denial that like any of my patients could find this.
Mine have.
I know. I'm just like, no, this is separate.
It's like its own thing. It's not.
It's not. And it is scary to put this out here because we are so intimate and so personal.
Yeah.
And for us specifically, like in psychology, we're taught to have very strict boundaries. Mm-hmm. And this is breaking those strict
so many of them.
boundaries.
Yeah.
It's scary. It's risky.
It's really scary. It feels risky. And so like we completely empathize with that feeling of like, I don't know if I want someone to be able to find this.
Sure.
Before they get a chance to really know who I am.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm just so grateful that I was willing to put her story out there. And for people who know her, she's totally fine to have her people know, and you can all learn and benefit from hearing more about her. So I'm sure that's a very like universal feeling. And I know other people have like wanted to come on our podcast, but maybe don't feel ready to be so public.
Yeah. Or like there's maybe certain aspects of their story that they're not ready to share, or they're just like not ready for it to be like a public thing. And that's completely fine. We respect anybody's decision and how they want to go about it. But I just thought it was something to note that like, even when you're someone who's like crushing it and you're like out there and you're sharing your story, like you can still have like this insecurity that this thing is going to define you, and it's going to like be like she talks a lot about MS being tied to her self-worth. And I think this is like just an example of that, just really wanting to like have a clear boundary between those two things. And I completely understand it.
Yep. I do too.
Yeah.
Well, we hope you enjoy. Also, side note, because we're still in Boston and we got our nails done today. Mm-hmm. And while we're getting our nails done, you wondered the origin of painting nails.
Oh yeah. Does anybody know? When did people start painting their nails? And with what?
And for what reason? Was it like blood?
I hope not. Yeah. I don't know. Cause it's like, I know they started using like blush and stuff, and they would use like flowers to like get the color. But I just wonder, like, nail polish is so specific, like the way it like has to stay on your nails.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Like ink.
Yeah. Now it's like there's like a whole art, like nail artistry,
and what else were we talking about the nail salon?
Well, actually, we were talking about at a nail salon.
What were we saying?
We were talking about that exact thing, like that feeling of like either like not being good enough or whatever. And you and I were talking.
Oh, right.
Yeah. And you and I were talking about, it's just funny. So you and I were talking about. Like,
I was
like, I don't really want to like be too forthcoming, but Hank, you can, I don't know, we'll figure this out.
Well, I was just saying I sometimes have like stuck thoughts around feeling like, oh, maybe I'm not expert enough or like not good enough or not like worthy to do these specific things. Like I'm not good enough at this thing, not expert enough at this thing. So I am just like not going to move forward with that.
Right. So it's like you see that there's an opportunity for you to like maybe take on something bigger and more, but it's like your own like evaluation of yourself gets in the way and keeps you from like taking actual action. Right. And I was like, oh my gosh, same. Like I was like that, like that's why when you gave me the referral for, I was pregnant at the time. Mm-hmm. I was like so stuck trying to make my website.
Yes.
And I had so much imposter syndrome. And I was like, why would anyone come see me?
Yeah.
Why me? Why me? Why me? And it's like anyone who knows me, I know would say like, that's absurd.
Right.
I know exactly why people would come see you. But in my messed up brain, I have all these reasons and doubts and things that I think I could be doing better and be more educated and whatever. And it was just funny to hear Erica voice those thoughts because I see Erica as like such an expert and I look up to her like in a lot of ways. Like, I mean, in like all the ways, but like professionally too, because we do similar work. Yeah. And like, she's always like someone I like will consult with, I'll refer to, like, no, I know.
I'm like, when you have neurotoxicity for 10 days, who am I supposed to ask questions to? Gosh.
I know. But it was just like crazy for me to hear you say that, because I was just like, and then I said to her, I was like, Erica, you know, like when we're doing our podcast, whenever you like have a question or a thought, I always think like, wow, that was such a profound thought.
And I'm like, same.
And then we just realized like, oh, like that's what imposter syndrome is. It like lies to you. Mm-hmm. And that everyone has it, no matter what like level you're at. I feel like there can always be like an element of that. And so my takeaway from the conversation was like, we need to be telling each other more.
Yeah. Like
how great we think the other person is. Not that we don't. I feel like we do.
Yeah.
But
I thought that was sweet. Also, when we were at Glossier, someone asked if we were sisters. Like, even without hair.
Yeah, even without hair, people thought we were related.
Yeah. We look like.
Yeah.
And we went to Sephora and they did like a skin exam.
Oh, yeah.
And we have the exact same skin.
Exact same skin type. What was really cool, this is a super tangent, but I just hadn't been in a Sephora in a while. Yeah. And I like...
You're like, this is so high-tech.
We were like, hey, can someone like help us find a color match for like concealer? Because I have like a bruise over here that I wanted to just like cover up a little bit. And they came with like a phone and a camera and they're like taking pictures of the skin and then like finding the perfect color match. It was insane. Wild. Like they give us a whole list of like products that are good for our skin and then like color matches and things that will work together. And like they were right. Like, they looked really good.
That was really weird.
And I was just like, wow, we've come a long way. Because I feel like sometimes back in like bat mitzvah days, I would like go into Sephora to like get my makeup done for free. And I'd come out looking like
not good.
Not like it really bad.
And like you could only get like your eyes done.
Yeah, like it was a really different experience. This was like it felt like a personalized skin AI consultation.
It was great.
Yeah. And then it was kind of funny because she was like, hey, so can you just take your hat off real quick so that I can take a photo so that your brim isn't blocking the like making shade on your face so we get an accurate color. And I was like, so like I just had like pretty gnarly brain surgery and I have like 27 staples in my head and I don't want to scare anyone in the store. So could I just like lift it up a little bit? And she's like, oh my God, yeah, I'm so sorry.
She was like, congrats.
Yeah, she's like, congrats. Can I ask you what's wrong? And I was like, are you sure you want to know?
Yeah.
And then I told her and then she
touched your boob.
By accident, she got uncomfortable and was like, I'm so sorry. But was here. And
yeah, it was a boob.
Anyways, so I was forthcoming in that moment. But like, that was basically because like
I also think it was because I was there.
And like, she literally was telling me to take my hat off. And I'm like, I don't think I should.
Right. You did leave the house yesterday.
Oh, yeah.
Without a hat. And we're in the elevator and we're like almost to the bottom, like ground floor. And I look over at Jordy and I'm like, oh my God, Jordy, you do not have a hat on.
And then I realized we're in an elevator full of people and it's been like pin drop silent.
For 45 seconds.
I was like, I hope that they weren't scared. But if they were, I understand. So then we came back upstairs and got a hat.
I just like, I am desensitized.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. And I got used to leaving the house without a hat before the surgery because I had more hair. Now it's like, I don't really want to do that because it's like pretty gnarly looking. Right. But hopefully the hair will grow back in soon and be fine.
And then you can leave the house without a hat.
Yeah. So I guess like our takeaway from this episode is that like nobody's immune.
No.
To like doubting themselves.
No.
And like your self-worth can be tied to so many things. And I think it's like really hard. It's especially hard when it's something that you don't have control over, like your health.
Yep.
And so I was just so grateful that she was willing to like have that conversation with us because I know a lot of people will like hear that and hear themselves in that story. And so we hope you guys enjoyed this. We will be recording a little bit more before we, before Erica leaves.
we're going to have to film and record another intro because
I'm going to be a little out of commission for a couple weeks. I'm on Thursday of this coming week. I'm going into the hospital and I'll start like basically the second half of this whole trial,
which is the main part.
The main part. So I will do 3 days of chemo. And then I will get a T-cell injection into my brain. and then I'm going to get real sick for like a week probably. And so I won't be able to like, maybe you should do like a vlog where you take like little video updates, 20 seconds every day. I mean, Hank can be in charge of that. Okay. Because like, what if I like can't remember?
Okay, yeah, I'm going to ask Hank to do that.
Yeah, that'd be funny.
And then I will also do 20-second updates on my end of how I'm feeling.
Of how you're feeling. Yeah. We need Erica's feelings in real time. So yeah, we can do little updates of how we're feeling. But yeah, we're going to record like one more intro outro so that we have an episode ready to go while I'm healing and resting, and my brain is hopefully killing all those stupid cancer cells that are in there.
Good luck, Jordy. We will all be thinking of you.
I appreciate it. And again, thank you to everyone who's just like been so supportive. And I just feel, I don't really know. There's like not really words for it.
Yeah.
But like, oh, I just like got a little emotional.
Yeah, I saw that.
Okay. I wasn't expecting that.
Oh, yeah. I was like, oh, I feel emotion like just like filling up.
How cool is it that like I get to just like have conversations with my best friend?
Oh, with me?
Yeah.
Oh.
That we can like have forever.
I know.
And it's like really special. Yeah. And that like we get to, that other people like find value in listening to that.
Right. And it's like nice for us.
And it's like, yeah, it's like something we obviously enjoy doing and do all the time anyways. But it's just been like such a highlight of
that's really
like
sweet.
a really terrible time.
I hope we're doing this when we're 60.
Yeah. Like I'm just like, I never imagined I would be doing a podcast.
Never.
I never imagined we would be doing a podcast. Yeah. I never imagined we would be doing a podcast about grief. I never imagined I'd have brain cancer.
Yeah,
you know, like there's
here we
so many things. And I'm just like, if like this is how I get to spend my time, like I feel really lucky.
Oh, I feel lucky too. I love you.
Yeah.
Love you.
Love you.
Thanks so much for listening to Grief Street. We put out new episodes every Monday. If you'd like to support us, give us a follow on Instagram and TikTok. Also, subscribe to our YouTube channel to find the video version of our episodes. Please subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts and give us a 5-star review. We would love to hear from you and get some feedback. If you'd like to contact us, please email griefstreetpodcast@gmail.com or leave us a voicemail at 508-474-3378. That's 508-GRIEFST. Our theme song is Hepcat Jive, courtesy of purpleplanet.com. We'll see you next time.